So I'm very pleased to say that all the charges against Allison Pearson, or potential charges, have been dropped. Allison herself has given us this statement. I am hugely relieved that Essex police have come to their senses. It's scary and upsetting for a law-abiding, decent person to face an accusation of stirring up racial hatred. What my case has revealed is the appalling overuse of non-crime hate incidents to silence opinions that everyone down the pub would think were completely normal. Free speech is a precious part of the British identity. We can now agree the police should spend time catching criminals, not believing complaints from random people that say they've been offended. Well, that's absolutely right. And 3 police forces, can you believe, were involved in this? And Essex police have issued a statement. We investigate crimes reported to us without fear or favour. We're sometimes faced with allegations of crime where people have strong opposing views. That's why we work so hard to remain impartial and to investigate allegations regardless of where they might lead. Very good. Now, you can take that as seriously as you want to. I'm delighted for Allison, and I know she was genuinely worried and concerned about this. But what about the dozens of other people who every single day get a knock on the door from the police? They're told they've been reported for a non-crime hate incident, and yet that will remain on their records, may well damage their prospects of getting jobs. It's all gone way too far. Now, Lionel Shriver, author and journalist, has written a piece in today's Spectator about this, and she thinks we need a very, very big reversal. And Lionel joins me live down the line. I read your piece earlier. So just tell us, where do you think the limits of free speech ought to move to?
I think this whole category of hate speech is a slippery slope and the beginning of the end of free speech. After all, hate speech is in the eye of the beholder. And in fact, even legally in the UK, that is how it's defined. It's hate speech if anybody calls it hate speech instantly. And that's why Allison was persecuted as well as prosecuted, because some fellow ex-civil servant, I think it was a fellow, objected, and then it went on for a year and involved 3 police forces. This is absurd. In the United States, there's no such thing as hate speech laws. And I think that the UK should get with that program. They're regarded as unconstitutional because they violate the First Amendment.
You're right. I mean, Allison, when she said to the police, who's made this accusation? Oh, no, Miss Pearson. The victim. That if someone takes offence, they are a victim automatically. So should we, under your definition, and I fully understand the importance of the First Amendment and the way America feels about all of this, and quite right too, should we be allowed to cause offence to whole groups of people? Should we be able to say, I don't like the Irish, or the Scottish are all mean, or a Yorkshireman never buys his round, or even things about different racial groups, religious groups? Should we, in your view, be free to say those things, knowing they'll cause offence, but not being insightful?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, I think that we should draw the line if it's an incitement to violence.
Yes.
But otherwise, we tend to forget there's nothing illegal about racism, about being racist. And we all, have vague categorical opinions about groups of people. I know a lot of those opinions are wrong. But it shouldn't be a crime to be mistaken or even to be prejudiced. We all have our prejudices, and there's nothing wrong with expressing unpleasant views, and there is nothing illegal, or there shouldn't be, about offending people, because the truth is that there's hardly a thought in the world that doesn't offend somebody.
Yeah.
As soon as you start saying you can't offend people, you don't have free speech anymore. I mean, a very good example is, in the eye of many beholders, if you say a single discouraging word about a permissive immigration policy, you're racist. And therefore you can't have that discussion. And yet that's a very important discussion for any country to have. Where do we draw the line? Who do we want in? How many? Do we integrate them? But no, to question immigration at all is potentially, for a lot of people, is to be prejudiced.
Lana Shriver, thank you very much indeed for giving us those very, very clear views. Now, what was just said was kind of what I grew up with. Sticks and stones can't break my bones. People say rude things, ignore them, move on. Now, through legislation, we've got police behaving like this. It was interesting, Stella, in the House of Commons today, the Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, saying that, he was really worried about the level of hate speech in this country. Lana Shriver may be giving a position that many will find difficult to believe or accept these days, but quite logical. Do we need to rethink the legislation around this on hate speech laws? I
think both can be true. I think you can both be concerned about hate speech, and you can also want to have this free speech absolutism that you're saying. Because in my opinion, what we need to have is social repercussions for people who are expressing opinions that we find to be deeply offensive. So while there aren't any legal ones, because, as we said, this situation with Allison Pearson it's ridiculous. There isn't actually any law that makes what Allison Pearson did illegal. Let's be clear about that. So we don't need to change the legislation there. The legislation is fine. What's wrong is, for whatever reason, that police force in Essex thought that this was a good use for the time.
Well, we have these things now called protected categories. I mean, why not just treat everyone the same? I mean, wouldn't that be more consistent?
But I'm sure there are cases there, Nigel, which, if you knew of, you would agree that this is a matter that needs to be dealt with. But what I think we need to return to is, look, you find something someone said deeply offensive, great. Don't be their friend. Shame them publicly. I have no problem with that. Don't hire them if you don't want to. That's it.
So it's a matter of taste, in a sense.
Well, I think there is a context point here, but on the protected characteristic issue that you raised, I mean, this is a hangover from the last Labour government, and hands up, the Conservative government could have done more on this, absolutely.
It did nothing.
It did some things, but it could have done more on this, and, I think a lot of people are beginning to see this as a huge problem, because it's a question of priorities. So, yes, there's the context, but there's also the question of priorities. It is not a good use of finite police resources for police forces, 3 police forces, to be investigating a journalist. And it shows we've got our priorities wrong as a country. So whatever we make of the issue, whatever we make of people causing offence or not, it's about putting police resources where it's really needed.
It's all part of two-tier justice, two-tier policing and legislation that I think needs changing. A quick What the Farage moment. I have to do this because I want to talk about the BBC. Keir Starmer quoting BBC Verify, backing up his facts about how many small farms would be affected by inheritance tax, which is completely at odds with what many other economists think. Now we learn that the expert at the BBC, and you might have heard of this fella, Dan Needle, has been around for a couple of years. Independent tax expert. Oh, no, he's not. It turns out he's been a member of the Labour Party for 35 years, and he is an activist. Independent tax expert. I should Coco. It's all nonsense. It shows that the BBC, frankly, over the farming issue, have not played with a straight bat.